Let's unravel Geeta's world.
For now, we've heard a lot of talk. We've only seen some investments, but we've not seen India transform into a manufacturing hub.
Of course, and
Far from it.
and
Show me the plants. They're not hidden in a bunker. So a lot of people say, oh no, a lot is happening, it's I'm like, manufacturing plants are not made in bunkers. That suddenly you'll open and you'll find, oh, India is a manufacturing hub. No, you see it. With your naked eyes, you can see the growth of India with the manufacturing hubs that have come up or not, right? Manufacturing plants that have come up or not, making India a manufacturing hub or not. I think somewhere we need to start focusing on that front.
I also feel that good economics has never been good politics in India. No, like if you see, no one in the BJP will try to explain this trade deficit with China this way. And the opposition is also going to pick this up on this figure in the election rallies, and they'll be like, Prime Minister Modi has sold off India to China.
If India says we'll not import such and such, they were affected, they were impacted. That we banned this, we banned Huawei, we banned, they were impacted.
Yeah.
But slowly and steadily, we're seeing that in the spare parts or parts for any of these, technological or technology-related gadgets and the automobile sector, they're still an indispensable force.
Hello and welcome. This is the 90th episode of Geeta's World. I'm like really overwhelmed. 10 episodes to clinch that 100
mark.
But it just feels like yesterday only we started this podcast.
It feels like only yesterday. But we covered a lot. We've really covered a lot and we've come a long way. And I hope we have a long way to go if our audience continues to support us and watch us. And listen to us.
And I think there would be many who would be tuning in for the first time. So for them, I'm Anna. I'm the host of this show. And with me is Geeta Mohan. And this is the podcast where we discuss everything that pertains to this world of geopolitics. So we are 90 episodes, which means like we have covered many issues on this podcast, which we are really proud of because we have covered those topics which often do not pass through the so-called, mainstream media's screens. So please do check out and listen to this entire episode because trust me, this is going to be really amazing because we are discussing the famous trio, India, China, and the US.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is extremely important considering, I think if anybody would ask Geeta, who is India's biggest trading partner, I think most of us would be like US, of course, because we have such a smooth relations with the US. Although it's not like very even, it's uneven, but
it's quite like uneven.
Of course, that is. Uneven. But like China, the reason we are discussing this is because we had a recent news data from Global Trade Research Initiative, which revealed that it's not the US that is our largest trading partner, but it's China, which we know is not like an ally; it's a rival. So
it's a competitor.
It's a competitor, but in the neighborhood, we are like
we have a rivalry for sure. But I suppose if you look at foreign policy and how it should play out, we should look at India and China as competitors and not as rivals.
Okay.
Although, yes, many would want India and China to be rivals. We've had moments in our relationship where we were at loggerheads. We've had moments where we still do, where we look like we're rivals. But if the story is only about rivalry and beating each other, rather than taking on the world and beating other markets, then we'll always be looking at this. And this is the number we're looking at, where the news is that China surpasses the United States of America as India's largest trading partner. But there is more to this. The fact is that there needs to be some introspection, some thinking on how to not just get ahead, but also get ahead, not just competing with one, but competing with the global market.
Also the fact that because it's the election season and, China and Pakistan are the two countries which are like, they often dominate our political landscape. And we always see, all these political parties indulging in these discussions that will limit the Chinese incursions, but clearly the numbers don't lie. And uh, yeah, economics and politics also intertwine, which we will look at in this episode. So what exactly do these numbers suggest? It is trade with China really indispensable for India? These are the things that we'll look at. So starting with the data, it can be a bit tricky. So I'll just lay it down for our listeners and viewers. So in 2021, if we look at it, China was the top trading partner. Then the US took over, and now we are talking about this particular year, this fiscal year. China,
Has
after a gap
surpassed.
of 2 years, has surpassed. So this GTRI report, which I mentioned, it reveals that India's bilateral trade with China stood at $118.4 billion, and imports increased by 3.24% and exports rose by 8.7%. In contrast, if you see the India US trade, it was $118.3 billion. With China, it was 118.4, and exports dipped by 1.32% compared to the previous financial year. And imports also with the US, it dipped by 20%. Now, this is like a data of 1 year. But to really understand, I think it's also important to factor in the last 5 years, which means from 2019 to 2024. So if we see that India's exports to China has remained relatively steady, imports have surged. And conversely, trade with the US has exhibited major growth, with exports surging by almost 48%. So let's try to
And
understand this.
imports. There has
Imports, yeah.
been a growth on both ends when it comes to the US.
Hmm.
When it comes to China, and that's the interesting story, the exports
Yeah,
have decreased, but the imports have increased.
increased, precisely.
So we are taking a lot, buying a lot more from China. So there has been a surge on both sides, but it's just that the import from China to India is far greater than the bilateral trade, um,
Yeah. Like,
the incoming and outgoing trade with the US.
yeah, like if you see India's exports to China in the 5 years is 0.6%. China's exports to India is 44.7%,
Yeah.
which means we're importing a lot of
Yes.
products from China. So if we go by this data, Geeta, does it mean, this is the question that I want to ask, that does it mean this bilateral exchange is heavily stacked in China's favor with,
Absolutely, it always has been.
hmm,
It always has been because whether we like it or not, and the conversations in every important multilateral forum has been how to create an alternative to China.
yeah,
Supply chains has become a very important and key conversation in all these major economic blocks, whether it's the G7 or the G20, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, we're looking at what is it that India exports and what is it that India imports.
yeah,
Now, when India exports, we export raw materials primarily: iron ore, cotton, yarn, handloom, spices, a lot of food products. But what does it import from China? It imports electronic spare parts for
yeah,
electronic items, spare parts for the automobile sector. Basically, all technology related stuff,
they're
machinery
importing.
related stuff.
Hmm.
According to one of the papers,
Yeah,
India imported 4.2 billion worth of telecom and smartphone parts. And this comes, Anna, at a time that there has been, post COVID, a lot of conversation
exactly.
with regards to security, and we will be talking about that too. But about whether if any part that is Chinese in a smartphone or in any of these gadgets
Yeah,
should not be used in certain sensitive areas,
yeah,
particularly in the borders of India. So when we are looking at how technology compromises security, at such a time we still are
hmm,
dependent Because if we stop importing from India, from China, what will happen? Our growth will slow down
Yeah.
because we will manufacture less. Why will we manufacture less? We'll manufacture less because we'll not be able to produce the products that require certain spare parts which are not made in India as of today.
Yeah.
Maybe in future it would be, but as of today, not. Then which are the countries that you look to? Those that are making these products.
Which is.
And if you look at those countries, it's primarily China.
China.
So China has surpassed the US very minimally.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because it has surpassed, it's news.
It's news.
Okay, so it's not a very major difference between trade between India and US and trade between India and China.
No,
There
but
isn't.
I think, Geeta, the important factor here is that with the US, we have like a trade surplus. And in contrast with China, we have a trade deficit if we look at the 5 years from 19 to 24. So that is important. Although you are mentioning that it's a marginal difference if we look at just 1 year data. So trade deficit, I think you should also explain what exactly is trade deficit and trade surplus for our listeners and viewers.
So, coming from not somebody who, who's an economist, but it's a very, very general term of trade deficit and trade surplus. When a country imports more than it exports, then you fall deficit in trade. Why? Because you are taking in more from a country than giving back to the country, which means you owe more money to that country.
Yeah.
And trade surplus is when you take less from a country, but you're giving more, which means they owe more money to you, then your trade surplus. So with US, there's we have an advantage. And with China, we have always been at a disadvantage. This is not a story of today.
Yeah.
Every conversation, every diplomatic meeting that we've had for years now, whenever the trade component comes in, the conversation is about always how the two sides discussed ways to tackle the imbalance of trade.
Yeah.
So there is a great imbalance in trade between the two countries, and it is not new. It has been there for a very, very long time, and it has been there because when the two countries started after independence and, both China and India, nascent countries, were just finding their feet.
Yeah.
But after, and we did see that in the 90s, we brought about liberalization, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But China started a little before that. Deng Xiaoping, around his time, they already had started beginning to change how a communist China looks, and from there to open up its markets, to bringing in manufacturing, to dealing with countries for their own interest when it suits them, and closing up when it doesn't suit them, but ensuring that they are open to business, to manufacturing, to markets, and providing cheap labor, which allowed so many of those countries to look to China. So they really made, a lot of forward movement.
In 1990, we were ahead of China, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then I think
when we were young nations, if you look at our country's GDP and our per capita, all of that, on all markers, India was ahead.
Yeah.
But it just took them real concentrated, focused thinking on how to take their country to the next level. Strategic too, because you see, you're compromising on a few things and yet not on others. You do not want to open your country up to everything Western, but you still want all the businesses coming in. So it was a balancing act, and in that, China today is way ahead. In fact, China has not just surpassed US in being the largest trading partner for India. China today is actually the largest trading country in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, it is. It is the largest trading country in the world, with trading that it has not just with competitors like India, but with rivals like the United States of America. Now that's rivalry, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with India also we have a traditional rivalry, but with countries in Southeast Asia, with whom they have not just competition and rivalry, but real tensions. So do we at the border, but real tensions when it comes to territory. And yet they're doing business with them.
Yeah.
So you're looking at China doing business with everyone, and those interests are kept separate from what their other values on territory, so on and so forth, really are.
Yeah. I just want to look at this a bit differently here because, like we are discussing, a lot is being said about the rising volume of imports from China and the trade deficit that we discussed, and almost everybody says that it's a bad thing. But what I feel is that it doesn't tell you the entire picture because imports are actually really crucial for India to be able, like you mentioned also, to be able to export,
Absolutely.
right? For example, like you mentioned, if you are manufacturing a cell phone, some parts that are supposed to go into that cell phone would come from China. All of that would be assembled and then exported. So, importing these raw materials is really crucial for it to be able to export. This means that you can never completely do away with imports from a country like China because in today's day and age, the supply chains of most firms they are globally distributed, and these interconnections are really crucial also because for your Apple and Samsung to make a lot of profit and then continue with the manufacturing process. So I mean, this immediate, knee jerk reaction to this kind of news of India having a huge trade deficit, which is like you say, it's not the first time. It's
It's
been
always been there.
yeah, always been there.
I mean, always meaning it's been there for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah. So this knee jerk reaction with China would be to increase the import duties on Chinese imports. But then again, if we do that, you're only going to harm your own Indian manufacturers who rely on imports of, these cheap Chinese goods to manufacture, globally competitive stuff and ultimately contribute to India's exports. So I want to understand that, this is the tragedy of our times. Like, and I also feel that good economics has never been good politics in India. No, like if you see, no one in the BJP will try to explain this trade deficit with China this way. And the opposition is also going to pick this up on this figure in the election rallies, and they'll be like, Prime Minister Modi has sold off India to China, and so on and so forth. But no one will talk about what we need to do to create the right climate here in India so that ultimately our manufacturers can start manufacturing components which we are importing from China right now.
See, that's the whole thing. When you said that, we do need China and the indispensability of China in our manufacturing sector,
Yeah.
the fact is that that's exactly what the conversation is across the world. That we need an alternative supply chain. And where did this conversation become bigger
Yeah.
than it used to be earlier is after COVID. Once COVID hit, the world wanted to take on China and yet could not because everything, all your medical equipments were coming from China.
Yeah.
So they realized that you need alternatives. You need alternatives to be able to take on a country, take a hard decision with a country that is not, that certainly is not going along with other countries and is finding a path way more adverse
Right. Yeah.
in nature than the said countries. So you do require alternative supply chain, and that's where I say it's not like you forever need China. You might forever need China if you never look within to make those changes. I'm saying if you've had this conversation for a few years now, what is it that you have done? Where is the manufacturing?
Yeah.
Where are the manufacturing hubs? Because there's a lot of conversation. Now, it's not just this. Um a lot of it has to do with smartphones, so on and so forth. The microchip industry has to do with security.
Yeah.
But then when they actually had to shift from China and they thought Foxconn,
Exactly. We have
thought they
discussed
would
that.
be coming to India and finally didn't and went ahead and set base in the United States of America.
Yeah.
So we need to find a way where there is confidence in investors to come to India for us to become a manufacturing hub. There are
Precisely.
concerns. What happens when when a business house, a big business house, is looking to a country or looking at a country to invest? They send their teams.
Yeah.
They see ease of doing business. Is India very easy to do business in? Might have improved quite a lot from the past,
Okay.
but we're still not a one window system as
Yeah.
was promised. Prime Minister Modi spoke about it quite a bit, but even now, the checks and balances, rules, regulations, clearances, they do take time, and it's not a one window system completely.
Yeah.
In some cases, it might be, I wouldn't be aware, but
Okay.
for all others. Then you need clearances on making that manufacturing plant, right?
Yeah.
What happens there? You in India face biggest problems in land acquisition. Not that one should acquire land forcefully from farmers, but it's a time-consuming process. Land acquisition and the negotiations, the pulls and pushes are a lot. Thirdly, when you look at you look to set up a plant somewhere, what do you assess that area for? You assess it for the logistics. Will trucks be able to ply on the roads or not? Now, we do know that, the government has said that they've built quite a few roads, but we are still a long way off. Also, the calculation of roads has changed quite a bit in how it used to be calculated earlier to how it is calculated now, irrespective if a road is reaching or not, if there is infrastructure, if you're looking at food products, are there cold storages, if we're looking at electronics, the requirements of logistics, how fast can it be, how smooth can it be, they'll have to import a lot of the raw material. How does that work for India? A lot of things. See, trade with the United States of America also. And why do you think an FTA is becoming? We are trying to get an FTA with a lot of countries that they say don't be this protectionist, open up a little. But India says if we open up to these businesses, then our small and middle sector will be really adversely impacted. So we have to India has to walk a very thin line. But in that also, there has to be some forward movement and some focused forward movement on supply chains. It cannot just be talk. They have
Of
to start
course.
walking the talk. And China does it with a sense of purpose and determination like none other. When they say they want this done, it gets done. Over here, there are hurdles, but today, for the West, if there is a country that has the space, the skilled labor, the brains to really make it, it would be India. So I am looking at why are we not there yet to say, okay, we can become an alternative.
Yes, I think, like you said, of course, there are multiple things that you said, like walking the talk, ease of doing business. But don't you think these are becoming like quite bogus in terms of the political narratives that are being set in India right now? Considering if you see not long ago, Prime Minister Modi, he discussed reducing this dependency for strategic and economic reasons on China. We had this entire conversation about India aiming to reduce reliance on Chinese imports and promote domestic manufacturing, the Make in India campaign, the entire fuss about India making it harder for Chinese businesses to operate there. We banned Chinese apps. We imposed import tariffs. We created bureaucratic hurdles. Then India also encouraged local production of goods that were previously imported from China. For example, India incentivized companies to manufacture pharmaceutical ingredients domestically and support local electronics assembly like iPhones here in India. And this also led some Chinese companies to leave India, while others were just trying to adjust by localizing their production to, or like forming partnerships with Indian companies. But then we are again here, right? We had all these steps. We had like, okay, now we are going all all the
Out
way,
against,
yeah, all
yes.
out against China. But here we are, and we are again saying that we have to walk the
So
talk.
there is one um, place where there's a lot of conversations, narrative building, also maybe ideas and how to move forward. There is another where we've actually done it or not. I think we are yet to achieve that second phase of actually have we done it or not.
Yeah,
And there is a dire need. There are a lot of compulsions, global economy, the economic slowdown, constraints when it comes to the conflicts that have taken place, so on and so forth. But for India, I think this was certainly, but is an opportunity. And we need to capitalize and capture it right now.
yeah,
Uh, Otherwise, it'll be too late. See, what is geopolitics, strategic policies all about? It's all about that opportunity of the window of opportunity.
right, yeah.
Right now, with everyone opposed to China, with US and China, I mean, just a little while ago,
Hmm.
with US and China, not, treating each other as rivals, and the United States of America almost sanctioning a lot of the Chinese, and the Russia-Ukraine war leading to China support to Russia,
Yeah.
further widening that rift and that gap, was an opportunity for India because India was placed well where everybody is listening or was listening to India.
Hmm.
But if you don't use that gap to say, okay, this is what we want, this is what we need to get done, so that people start or countries start looking to us, looking at India, then what happened? Or what's happening now? There will be a moment because there always is.
Yeah.
Diplomacy is all about going, around a circle. There are good times, there are bad times, there are ebbs and flows
Yeah.
in a relationship.
Yeah.
And so, what is happening over here? We're now looking at US engaging China. The trade reps had gone.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
restarting conversations.
Hmm.
They're looking at, they become very careful with their statements on China, saying that, well, we can't ignore it. In fact, even in India,
Hmm.
from COVID days where we used to say boycott this and we've stopped that and we've stopped this, to now, if you hear External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar, he himself has said, well, the reality is that they're competitors, but they are indispensable for now. And that's
Yeah.
why we need to continue importing from them.
Hmm.
So I think that window of opportunity should not be lost, where
Hmm.
you need to look at how you can become a manufacturing hub. For
Right.
now, we've heard a lot of talk. We've only
Yeah.
seen some investments, but we've not seen India transform into a manufacturing hub.
Of course. And
I mean, far from it.
yeah, and
Show me
less.
the plants. They're not hidden in a bunker. So a lot of people say, oh no, a lot is happening, this man. I'm like, manufacturing plants are not made in bunkers.
Yeah.
That suddenly you'll open and you'll find, oh, India is a manufacturing hub.
Yeah.
No, you see it.
Hmm.
With your naked eyes, you can see the growth of India with the manufacturing hubs that have come up or not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Manufacturing plants that have come up or not, making India a manufacturing hub or not.
Hmm.
I think somewhere we need to start focusing on that front.
Yeah, precisely. And also, let's also factor in this fact that while the trade with China is not limiting, here we are. China still has not appointed an ambassador to Delhi in over 16 months, the longest period thus far. The two countries, we have also not resumed direct flights between us. The increase in trade comes despite the other restrictions on trade and investment placed by India since 2020 in the wake of Galwan clashes and the killing of soldiers. So, like while we are discussing all these are the true facts. I think we should not forget. Um, Geeta, just one thing, because we have discussed India and China, of course, but let's also focus on India and US's relations a bit, in the sense that we've talked about economics, right? But uh, I also want to look at it a bit geopolitically, in the sense that we know the real test, it is in financial terms, because when relations between countries pan out, I think financial relations between countries are also equally important. Like you said also that Russia is very much crucial to India. So in the entire Russia-Ukraine war, we did not stop importing oil from Russia. So that is like a testament to friendship, right? And that also enhances the geopolitical relations between the two countries. Coming to India US's relations, like we said in the beginning, also, it's not even, it's uneven. And recently, also, a flurry of things have happened. Like, for example, the entire xenophobic comment that Mr. Biden, spoke of India, equating it with Japan. So, and of course, partnering with India for the US is extremely important because of the rival China. Then there was this state visit to the US, which you covered. That was an important spectacle. So they're like a bit more like, there are high points, there are low points. But what I read, that there are several observers who have remarked that the India-US relations, they are considerably more fragile than they might appear. They said that the two countries, they continue to experience friction in several areas, which, if they are left unaddressed, could ultimately undermine or derail, future cooperation. Like I said, xenophobic, or probably meddling into internal affairs, or probably if you speak about the entire CA protest. So US has been vocal about how India is functioning, or the Gurpatwant Singh Pannon episode, or the Niger killing. So, and also the Chabahar port, the recent deal that has happened. So, what I'm coming at is that, do you think that these fragile relations, where there is an undercurrent of hypocrisy as well, right? It's not like tit for tat. It's not like on the face.
Anna, I
So,
get it. Yeah,
yeah.
complete what
Yeah,
you
so
say.
that's what I'm asking. So you think that India worries that, the US could actually be an unreliable partner in the future. So that is why it's not relying much more freely now, because they're anticipating that something could go wrong. And that's why the trading
If
is
anything, there is a
reflecting.
trust issue with China because every time Modi and Xi Jinping have met,
Yeah.
they've ended having a friction at the border every single time. So every time there is hug diplomacy and the hugging and all of that, you end up
Yeah.
having friction at the border.
Yeah.
With US, that's not the case. There was, however, a time when any issue to do with human rights or factors that are outside the realm of hardcore
Hmm.
engagement on bilateral relations to do with economics
Right.
on the economic front would impact the economic cooperation between the two countries in the past. Now, what used to happen was that they'd say, but we want you to do this on this on this on this, right?
Yeah.
No longer the case. You have to give it to how India has grown. Now, they want a steady relationship with India, irrespective
Hmm.
of what's happening. I give an
Okay.
example
Hmm.
that when the protests happened, CA, NRC, they are mindful that they are a country that values democracy and, is the country that tells the
Oh,
world
the oldest
right from
democracy.
wrong and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
So they do say it, but they also say, well, but it's an internal matter of India.
Hmm. Yeah.
And they can best decide how to deal with the situation. However, we would only say that our countries and allies and partners should respect and honor
Yeah.
rights
Yeah.
of all or things like that. But they try to ensure that it does not impact relations. Also, because India is a huge market.
Hmm.
For China, also, India is a huge market. If
Yeah.
India says we'll not import such and such, they were affected, they were impacted. That we banned this, we banned Huawei, we banned,
Hmm.
they were impacted.
Yeah.
But slowly and steadily, we're seeing that uh, in um, the spare parts
Hmm.
or parts for any of these technological or technology related gadgets
Yeah.
and the automobile sector, they're still an indispensable force.
Hmm.
With US would want greater economic relations with India and wants an FTA, so on and so forth, is because they are the ones who are at a disadvantage when it comes to balance or imbalance of trade.
Okay.
With China, it's the other way around.
Yeah. Because they
They're
know that.
sending stuff because India for them is a market.
Yeah.
And then they're importing less is because they further are major exporters to other parts of the world.
Hmm. Yeah.
So why would they import? Which means their manufacturing capacity
Capacity is
is
too.
anyway way more than what the country requires. So if they're making cars, if it's getting consumed within the country, and the rest is anyway going out.
Yeah.
In India, you're making cars, you've imported spare parts from China,
Yeah.
you're making cars. If you're an exporter, you'll export some, or else it gets consumed within.
Yeah.
So what has China found? China has found a market for spare parts, and indirectly, it's a market for the cars that have been sold in India with spare parts that are from China, right?
Right. Yeah.
So for them, India is a huge market. They would not want to lose it. And therefore, every time India came out after COVID and said that, we're banning this, they were actually concerned.
Yeah.
They were actually worried. They thought, how much of this arm twisting will we be able to suffer? Only to realize that while this world is talking about alternative supply chains, they haven't been able to build one. Vietnam, Philippines are countries that are coming, that are looking as, alternatives to many of the important phone companies from Taiwan, microchip industry from Taiwan, are moving. And those who are in Apple, that moved from China, went to Vietnam. So there are companies that are actually looking at leaving China and looking at Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
So unless and until India becomes the place to go, if you don't want to be in China,
right,
we will see this happening.
Yeah.
And China will continue to rule the global trading industry, so to say, or supply chain industry for at least some time, if not a long time.
Also, Geeta, I think you mentioned earlier about how easy it is to set up a business in India. So I'm just linking the two right here. To expand on the xenophobic comment, this was quite surprising in the sense that considering the good relations that India and the US enjoy, yet when you say xenophobic, it means that you're being, as being suspicious of outsiders. One can say that India, despite the improvements in ease of doing business, is a notoriously hard place, like you explained, to set up business in. We still have to attract a lot of, global manufacturers for whom India is not a natural choice. They would rather go to Bangladesh or Vietnam or Mexico. And we also opine to sort of place very high import duties, but that hasn't helped as our exports have declined in the latest
That's a very
financial year.
important point you make.
Right. So this kind of protectionism is good politics, but it's certainly not good economics, like I said earlier. So you have to let your manufacturers import the raw materials for their finished goods at the lowest possible cost. So by putting these import duties in place, we are not helping Indian manufacturing. And most observers, they have been surprised that this is coming from Prime Minister Modi, who talked a lot of about, ease of doing business and minimum government, maximum governance. So what do you make of this return to protectionism?
So it's not a return to protectionism. It's a continuism of protectionism. It's not like we ever got rid of import duties.
Okay.
But if you're to compete with countries like Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia, who've done away with these duties, obviously companies would not like to pay more to get their stuff to a country where they have their manufacturing plant. Now, over here, there is India is a country with a massive population that is not economically, quite well-to-do. In that, you need to protect their interests. There are small industries, medium industries. They will completely shut down should you allow anyone to come in competitive prices, which is why India was always a little protectionist. But now you have to look at it, also compare, and do an economic analysis. Now, we are not the people to tell how these economics would work. But yes, to see whether if this is better than providing jobs to a lot many people if manufacturing comes in, or is it better to have these small and middle income sector thriving with smaller businesses thriving and have the foreign companies not really come in because of the import duties. Here you have to draw a thin line and say, okay, or assess on the government and the country has to assess whether if they want people to come in and how best to bring them in. Is there a middle path that they can find where your own indigenous industries do not shut and yet you're able to find manufacturing coming in for more job creation.
Right, yeah.
So there has to be, it cannot be protectionist anymore. However, I don't think India can be called xenophobic. It's not xenophobic. It certainly could be protectionist,
Yeah.
but it's not for out of fear or dislike that we're not calling people in. It's out of the concern that there could be a massive backlash.
Okay. Okay.
Should these companies come, there could be a massive backlash, whether if it is land acquisition, whether if it is, routing the small and mid sector out. So there's going to be there's a lot of politics involved. Also, remember, it's not like China where they're thinking 20 years ahead because they're not technically not being faced with election every 5 years. But if you're doing it every 5 years, whilst you want to think of your country, you also want to think of how to return to power. Now, if there's a massive backlash, how will that impact the government and will the government fall? If the government falls, the next government will know that, oh, we need to get, because the opposition would have rallied behind this point and come to power. What are they going to do? They're going to get rid of this and say, oh, we're not going to do this anymore. You're back to protectionism. And the person who dared to take the risk has lost. So there's a lot of politics involved too in these decisions.
Yeah.
They have to take the risk, have to be bold, and yet be kind. A government that does not show kindness to its people, especially the downtrodden, might have a long life or a small life, but I'd say it better that they have a smaller life because it's important for a country as large as India, with people not so well off and with people who are yet to they have aspirations and yet they're yet to achieve it. You need to be a firm but a kind government.
Yeah, right. I think that very much sums up the entire conversation that we have had and a lot of reflecting as well. So, what I'm seeing is that amid all these political narratives that we are seeing, that okay, if we come to power or if we are in power, we'll limit China's dependence, I mean, India's dependency on China. That is not going to happen in the near future.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Unless we take some like really stringent and, be bold enough to actually walk the talk, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll put an end to the conversation, Geeta. Thank you so much. It was a mini economics class for me.
It is not an economics class. It has more to do with the politics of economics because we cannot claim to be economists. I'm sure, there'd be a lot of people who'd say, oh, well, she didn't say this, she didn't say that. Forgive us if we've gotten a few things wrong. We'd welcome your comments and corrections. But what we're trying to discuss over here is the politics of the economics right here. And the conversation, Anna, should end with this, that whilst we are reporting how China has yet again surpassed the United States of America as the largest trading partner, in these conversations, I also said that China is one of the largest or is the largest trading country in the world. And guess who's US's largest trading partner? Or who's China's largest trading partner? It's the two countries.
Two countries with each other.
So, China can be the largest trading partner of many countries.
Yeah.
But who's China's largest trading partner? So, rivalry and rivals aside, at the end of the day,
we'll do the business.
Economics matters. And capitalist nations like the United States of America and those that have managed to have their communism and yet be capitalistic are thinking business and business interests.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. I think it's really well explained. Like you said, we are not economists, but to really understand the politics of economics is really interesting because I was not taught until now from you. Yeah. So thank you so much. And to all the listeners and viewers, if you stay till the very end and if you have any inputs, to share with us, do share in. The number is 8588 or you could also email us, which is pods@indiatoday.com.
Thank you.
Thank you.